Okay, so let's talk about when, how, and why phonological processing errors can even occur in the first place, and why it is that they are pretty common. So let's start things off with looking at this cute little baby. When we look at a baby like this, we are all overcome with cuteness, right? And while the cuteness is certainly indisputable, we need to remember how looks can really be deceiving. Behind all the cuteness is a brain that is doing things that, to you and I, we would consider pure genius. Phenomenal things are happening during the first year of life. So that little baby who is looking kind of goofy and making spit bubbles and squealing, their brain is actually doing amazing work with discriminating speech sounds. You know, there's actually a very fascinating TED Talk that shines a light on when children start to make sense of speech sounds. It's called The Linguistic Genius of Babies. And please, if you get a chance, go find this on YouTube because it's really dense with amazing information. And so the presentation is about a study that was done that explores when children start being able to discriminate speech sounds in general, and then even more so in their native language. And as it turns out, children at about 6 months to a year can discriminate the sounds of any language that you put in front of them. And that's something that you and I couldn't even come close to doing. So this means that that 6-month-old children can pick up on all the nuanced differences in Mandarin or French or any other language that you put in front of them. So it really is fascinating. But something else that they stumbled on in the study that had me screeching the brakes was the time frame when children start to specifically hone in on the sounds of their native language, their first language. Because this is so important to really digest. Because at approximately 7 to 10 months, children start to truly distinguish the sounds of their language. And in the presentation, the presenter just kind of quickly states that this is the critical period for sound development and moves on. But I find this to be a really super important finding as far as speech errors are concerned, because this is when things can start to go wrong at this early age. So why is this so important to know? Well, let's take a look. A child doesn't typically start saying their first word until about a year old, right? And then they don't really start using more words and putting words together until around 18 months to 2 years. But now we know that they're starting to put the puzzle pieces of speech together as early as 6 to 7 months. This means that there is up to a year and a half where children are processing phonological information, but we don't really get a good picture of how it's being processed until they start speaking more frequently. Because the way that children process speech is ultimately the way that they will start producing speech. This is truly a golden time frame. During this time, ample face-to-face playing and listening activities will build the framework on which they will stand for all of their formative years. And yes, this is highly important for clear speech, but it is also vital for reading and writing and fine-tuned listening skills. And this is especially important in today's world where there are so many external distractions. So this is when those tiny babies aren't just blowing spit bubbles and being cute. Their brains are hard at work and they're starting to discriminate sounds. Now, how and why do these errors occur? Well, let's take a second to think about this time period in a baby's life, as it relates to listening especially. There are so many things that can get in the way of what actually requires some very fine-tuned discrimination skills during this time of a baby's life. As any parent well knows, this time period can often be filled with a ton of ear infections, right? Or if not actual infections, plenty of congestion and fluid in the air. And, you know, if the baby is in the supine position, laying down, which they often are because they're eating, this can lead to fluid moving around in the ear. And anyone who's had fluid in their ears knows what it can sound like, right? It's very muffled and it can be pretty annoying. So just think of how common this likely is during the ages of 6 months to a year. Then add in background noise and increasingly less face-to-face communication, especially in today's modern world, and you can start to get the picture of how and why it might be so hard to really properly process and distinguish all sounds that have really common characteristics. So in the next video, I want to show you how relatively easy it is for phonological processing to go wrong. I'll do my best to give you a picture of what it might actually sound like for a child who is having difficulties. So check out the next video.